Welcome to Floating Questions, the podcast where curiosity leads, we follow, and stories unfold. My name's Ray, simply asking questions. Shall we begin? In this episode, we're joined by Timothy Chen, an engineer turned funder turned VC. For nearly 2 decades, Tim has been building and betting on technical products, from distributed systems and cloud-native platforms to mentoring open source projects as a member of the Apache Foundation. Whether writing code or checks, he's been operating at the infrastructure level, where the work is invisible but mission critical. Welcome, Tim, and thank you for joining me today.
Well, thanks for getting me on.
Super excited to have you. We chatted once, but I immediately just picked up that you have a really fun and open energy that I just really want to understand your story a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't know how interesting it will be, but yeah, here to share whatever.
And also, thank you, chat, if you're listening, for making the introduction. Okay, let's see. You have built tools for builders and invested in technical funders and helped shape, this modern software infrastructure. This is obviously all very impressive. Maybe let me unwind a little bit and go back all the way to when you just graduated from college. And is your first job like at Microsoft around a financial crisis, 2008?
Yeah, I mean, real full-time job. Yes, Microsoft.
Why did you leave Microsoft?
Yeah. So grew up in Taiwan for the most part, actually.
Oh, really?
I was born in New York, but then I moved back to Taiwan when I was 7 and came back to Seattle when I was 16. My older sister, she got into University of Washington. She um, So I had a choice. Should I come back here or not? Parents saying like, hey, you're born here. You have a passport. You want to move back. You should just do that. And so I came to Seattle when I was high school and I get to know what's happening here. Everybody around here, usually if you want to go to college, you want to go to UW. And if you graduate from UW, you want to be engineer. There's really only like 3 places you go work at. Microsoft, Amazon, Boeing maybe back then. Google wasn't even there yet, right? And so I basically was just trying to make it because I wasn't a computer science degree at all. Like my GPA just wasn't good enough. I couldn't even get into CS. So I got into this weird major called informatics, which is like a design plus library science kind of major.
Oh, wow.
But I was really interested in programming. So I'm spending most of my other time doing open source and trying to learn as much possible. Like I'm doing online free classes from MIT, from CMU, just to improve my knowledge. So I was just trying to make it into like a real engineer. It's like, how do I find a job that actually is a software engineer job? Because my resume wasn't that obvious. Like I was not CS, and I don't have any crazy background. So I was really happy I was able to get into Microsoft, as a non-CS person because not many people were able to in my major. It was only like 2 people or something like that. Once I landed Microsoft, this is what I learned, right? There's levels in every society, right? When I made it in Microsoft, I made it into Microsoft IT, which is one of the lowest places in Microsoft. Like it's a reality of the world is so interesting. I didn't get to choose though, right? They saw my background and said, oh, you should be good to do an internship. So I was intern at Microsoft first, and you get to be an intern on IT side. It just means I'm not working any products. I'm just doing one of the like support teams, like it might be your data center HR system or something like that. Like it wasn't even like doing that much coding at all, and let alone doing anything interesting. But the worst part of it is Microsoft IT. You start off one grade lower than your normal college grads. So if you know Microsoft, there's the number system, right? Like you start with level 59, you grow. I was level 58, coming in, which is like I couldn't even transfer. So that time, I think after like the first week, I know I had to get out of here. But like, I want to stay at Microsoft. Like, I really like the company. Like, you are from Seattle, you should, right? Back in that time, it's still like the best place to be at. So I wasn't trying to leave Microsoft. I was trying to leave the team I was in to join real Microsoft team, like working on anything. I didn't even care. All my coworkers, even my boss, would just laugh at me. Like, Tim, nobody made a life out of you. You're stuck here forever. Which is true. The only any person that have left MSIT to join a product team is only PMs, and only a few of them, very few of them. Like, so really, really bizarre, you know? Like, I just got into like a place where like it's like the lowest level you can ever possibly imagine in the hierarchy chains. Oh yeah, I was so bored. I was literally so bored every day. Like, there's not much to do every day, but I had to pretend you're doing something. This is the reality of being a Microsoft employee. So I was can't wait. And then the financial crisis happens, right? I was actually close to trying to get internal transfer interviews, and even had one manager really, really liked me. I passed the normal coding interviews, even though my level doesn't meet. They're willing to give me a shot. And then the last step is actually to ask my manager to approve me to get a move. And my manager even blocked that. So, you know, for whatever reason. So I was like, I'm done here. I have no choice. No place to transfer. I can't do anything interesting. I'm spending all my days besides working on open source projects just to improve things, work on real something interesting. I wasn't planning to move to Microsoft. I even bought a house next to Microsoft. I was married pretty much right after college. And I told, Judy, like, hey, we're probably going to stay here for a while. Let's go buy a house right next to Redmond, right on the 51st Street. I can even like bike to Microsoft campus. Like, just like anybody working at Microsoft, you just assume you're going to be there like 15, 20, 25 years. One, I saw a whole bunch of people get laid off and people are crying out of the office, right? And I saw that in real life, right? You have no notice, right? During that, like 15, 20,000 people layoff time. So I saw how brutal things are. And then the reality also hit to me, like there's no job for me that's going to be interesting internally, right? I'm just not good enough on paper of anybody. So let me go interview outside. And yeah, anyway, that's how I really went.
And then after Microsoft, when I was checking out your LinkedIn, under one early job notes, you wrote down company shut down soon after. This is also after Microsoft. And, and so like then it was like 6 years of like bouncing between startups. Did you notice any patterns about what makes technical products like succeed or fail during that exploration period?
um, you know, my primary motivation back then, like I mentioned, wasn't even thinking about any product company whatsoever. Give me a job that does something interesting. Like, I actually want to be a real engineer, writing code, building products. I thought that's my job gonna be if you join an engineer. Like I told you, I was at Microsoft just sitting there doing nothing, right? I was just like, can I find something somewhere I can work on something real so I can actually grow as an engineer? And my first startup I joined, it was the only available option for me. But luckily for me, that company didn't work out for a whole bunch of reasons. And I still remember it. But that was a company where there's so much freedom to do things because it's solely funded by Paul Allen. So Paul is one of the Microsoft co-founders, right? He has so much money. This is one of his experiment company. Like, hey, go try out this little social experiment company and see if we can make it as a company. If we don't, I'll just fund you, for a while. So nobody's there to make money in a company. I realized if you don't make money making as a goal for a company, you will be a very weird company. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And by the way, some companies that raise a whole bunch of money also feels very similar way too.
Really?
Yeah, because money is there. Capital can be raised pretty quickly, right? Why should we always like worry about making money? We can always be there. So I learned that pretty early. What does it feel like to be a company that doesn't care about revenue? But it actually helped my growth as an engineer because I was working on real systems end to end myself. It was so very rewarding, you know? It got me real programming skills because I was actually building stuff myself a lot. Um, if you don't give yourself somebody the power and freedom to actually build and learn and do things, you never learn as a person. Yeah. So anyway, at that time, I wasn't care about like, does your company gonna grow or not? Like, how do I know? I'm just an engineer trying to make it. But it's funny, like how life works, right?
Hmm.
We join companies without really thinking a lot of factors. But like when I'm looking back, a lot of these places I joined actually helped me quite a bit, even what I'm doing today.
Right. And so, what are the some points that were sort of like imprinted in your head when you were just like randomly bouncing and just trying to make it as an engineer?
I was not like randomly browsing. The reason I put like company shutdown at that time
Yeah.
is because recruiters ask me why I keep switching jobs. Mhm. Not all of them is my choice. This one didn't work out. I was kind of following my own interests plus what I think will be a fun place to work at, plus a lot of things I can learn. Which is startups are like a very natural place for it. So first one every really able to like see how is a dysfunctional company, I guess, in some level that doesn't care about money, how the work looks like. And I'm a gamer. So I went to a game company afterwards. And I had the most fun in my ever had as an engineer because I was working on games, working on back end of the games. I'm the only engineer working the whole back end. And it was a pretty popular game back then. So it was a very rewarding thing. But I got to taste the game development culture, right? Which is pretty toxic, for sure. So I realized, okay, this culture thing actually matters. I cannot just be forever not sleeping and have to be taxied back to the company after sleeping there for 2 days or something like that. I end up being threatened and all that kind of stuff that happens quite often in
What
that
do you
kind
mean by threatened?
threatened by your bosses and other things like that. Like if you don't come in and sleep in the office on an ongoing basis, you have different issues and just stuff like that. Like
That's
they basically
wild.
and most engineers, if you work at a real company, there is like a stand up, right?
Yeah.
I don't think you ever heard of a stand out before. Um, in game companies, there's stand ups and there's the walkouts, the stand outs. So you make sure you come in the office at certain time, like 9 or whatever, and you make sure you don't leave until like 6 or 7, which is like the um, let's all sync up again and meet in person at 6, and nobody else can miss that, right? So they added that too, right? Which is like past 6:30 or 7 or something like that. Right? Every day you have to be there. And you're still working afterwards, by the way. But you have to
Okay.
physically be there to make all those meetings. And this is just the weekdays. Weekends are by default thinking that you're going to be working or be in the office by default. So anyway, this is just interesting. Like being in that game environment, like I can't stay there that long. And my wife is super unhappy, and I'm just like it's just too crazy.
Was
So
it because of the company culture, or there is specific traits about gaming industry that also tends to maybe make a company to have that toxic
I think
uh
it's just the
working?
industry as a
I
whole
see.
because there are too many people that wants to work on games. This is a pretty much a supply demand problem. Like
Hmm.
when you have a very high demand industry that a lot of people just somehow likes to work on things, so you're not afraid of churning them. Like I lose an engineer, I'll get one, right? Right? I have too many people want this job, and this job is so high pressure. Like there's so much deadlines, the popularity of the game. Like it's really hard to make a game, right? And I always describe to people like people don't know what it feels like to work on games. And as your engineer, like it's just writing code, right? Like what's the difference? Like it's very different because the goal of a normal product and the goal of a game is completely different. When you work on products, there's a huge uncertainty, right? When you even just work on normal products, no matter what products, how long something will get done and shipped. There's uncertainty, but for the most part, if your product delivers what it says it should do, we're good. That can ship, right? Like there's like some kind of functional expectation, like things verified at the end. Games doesn't have that, you know? Games, the goal isn't like the game should behave this way. No, the game has to be fun. That's the goal. It's a vibe. So the designer might have assumed this thing can produce that vibe, and you cannot test it easily. So we all had to sit there and work for quite a while and believe it will. But like at some certain checkpoint, you play with a high fidelity enough. It's like this game sucks. Or there's like a similar game, or like there's another product enter the same market you assume it could be the best one, that just like seems more fun than you. And that happened in our development. Like one of the Zynga came out another game very similar to what we're doing, and just like this seems way more fun and more shinier than we're doing. Delete the whole code base and start over, right? But the deadline is the same because we line up the announcement with like Apple and other players. Like so you cannot change the deadline. But the goal is all vibes. And so that's why it's difficult to ship a game because your goal is actually making sure that people get addicted to this, right? And so you have to actually try a different experiments to get to that point. And so that huge like loop is very difficult to know how long
Interesting.
that takes. And if you have a huge budgets, it doesn't matter. Like it just always takes longer. Um, so it sucks to work in those environments.
Interesting. Do they have any iterative sort of like learning incorporated into like how they set up the game or how they design things where it's really just like you only do the testing when you launch the game, basically?
No, you try to test it beforehand, obviously.
Right. Okay.
But I will say the hardest part about games is usually the marketing side. I worked on Halo 5 before, which is like a more AAA game, right? Your AAA games, your expectation is I'm going to launch at this E3 date, lined up with the head of Microsoft setting there like we shipped Halo, right? That they can't change. Because a console game is also tied to the console sales too. So I cannot delay Halo because Xbox, whatever certain version is dependent on this thing to sell with it, right? So it's the same deal. The launch date is fixed, but you got to figure out something that works. And games are hard to test when there's very low fidelity. Like you can do like wireframes and SaaS apps and kind of just like, does this solve your need, right? Is it intuitive enough? You can do Figma sketches. But games you cannot do Figma gaming. Also, you're testing a bunch of psychologies. So the testing can only be done, I would say, 3 to 4 months or maybe 6 months after a game has been worked on to in a more degree. But there's a huge chance that this thing just doesn't make it. And so you just delete your 6 months of work and start over. Yeah.
Sounds like it's very difficult to honestly start a video game studio because you're essentially putting a lot of time in this one game. So that's why, in general, it makes sense if it's a big company and they can invest in a portfolio of video games. It's almost like VC, right? And then hopefully one or two or three of them actually work out.
Yeah. Yeah. Our own game studio, they had a couple hit games. I thought it was a great company and growing, but it hit ceilings pretty quickly too. Because it couldn't find and should produce even better games, or because game has shelf lives. It's never hot forever, right? Hot for some time. There's a newer game now, like people's attention has shifted. So we have to produce something new again. Is the next is gonna be better than the last one? Can we continue? Should we do that? Most studios don't make it long.
Hmm.
So yeah. It's a tough industry for sure. And that's why it's very hard to make it.
Okay. So far, it sounds like your dream was Microsoft, but unfortunately, your resume doesn't look as good as they normally would want to pick. And then you just want to grow as engineer, and
Mhm.
then trying to find something that's interesting and fun to work on, and then learn that culture is really important, and even like the industry itself, the nature of the industry is really important for you
Yeah.
to probably be selective about. Then based on everything that you listed out in public profile, like you've always been drawn to building for technical users, at least most of the time. Why do you think that is?
Mm, I think that's a good question. I think maybe because one thing I that got me to able to actually learn computer science in the first place is open source. Normally, you engineer, if you want to learn how to build good products, you join a company and a team that's working on those products, and maybe you work on some features, so you grow from there. I never had the luxury to do that. My, I was stuck in Microsoft and low level and all that kind of stuff, so I couldn't really able to get the opportunity. So open source, nobody checks your resume before you submit a pull request to GitHub, right? And so it was so freeing. And so to me, like that was the starting place for me to feel a dopamine. Like, oh wow, I worked on a feature that actually was merged into a project that people are using. And even though it's small, doesn't have to be something crazy. But like, wow, actually, that's amazing. I wrote code, and I learned something. And it was useful. And it's something interesting. I don't have to wait for somebody and go interview me and do coding interviews and look at my resume and finally see if I'm good enough to do a job. I can just submit a PR and also learn in that process to get better as an engineer. So I think I just very appreciative of sort of these open source projects. And open source projects are always for technical users. Like it's for the most part, for the last 15, 20 years, it's like only engineers will able to clone a code base and do something, right? So I guess I grew up as an engineer through the open source way. And therefore I'm very interested with the developer ecosystem. And I will say maybe this is by accident. I wasn't really working on anything developer fake focusing because I worked on every was a search engine. IT was boring, doesn't matter what it is. And gaming has no developers really. But the next job I was in was called Cloud Foundry, and Cloud Foundry was a very much a developer focused product. It's a Heroku open source kind of thing basically, and I was really kind of drawn to it. Like, so wow, there. If when you work on developer products and if it's become a takeoff to be something really interesting, all the developers start talking about it, and that's sort of like vibe I never felt before. Oh, this is really cool. Well, I can be cool again in developers. Because I was never cool. I was never cool. I would have no CS degree. I was like always trying to prove it. I was always trying to make it. I'm just always trying to improve and make it, improve and make it. Like it's always in that like fighting mode. And like suddenly people suddenly very interested. When you work on games, sure, but like I'm not the only person working on games, right? So you don't get that effect. But like developers even getting interesting. Wow, that's super interesting. So and also like one thing I realized working on open source that I felt is a very huge career hack, besides the no gatekeeping, is the code I write becomes a resume because it's so much more visible what you're working on. Because when I put on resume, like I work on these things, like who knows how good or bad that is, right? But like my GitHub resume is so much more obviously there. So I got reached out by so much more recruiters when I saw that I have more GitHub stuff, and people like would invite me to talk on meetups and stuff like that more. And so I was like, wow, this is amazing, right? I want to do this more. So answer your question why I'm building for technical users. I think there's like one aspect is open source that really has my bedrock of my career, and also like the type of problems I like to solve is also system problem, distributed systems problem. They tend to be more open, like engineer focused products like databases or something like that. Like otherwise you don't solve those kind of problems that often, you know. And yeah, some products I worked on that become huge, sort of like by accidents. Like I joined Mesosphere to work on Mesos, which become huge as well. I joined Kafka team at LinkedIn to work on Kafka. That was a pretty huge project back then, and I was able to like be in part of these communities, and I was just like feel so fascinated by them. Like wow, it's the cool hype thing. It's like DeepSeek or whatever crazy thing it feels like for a little engineer geeky nerdy people. That's the thing that they're all talking about. So it's always cool to work on something hot, for sure.
Yeah, interesting. What I'm hearing is you grew as an engineer in open source community and you contribute back to that community. And so you built for that community. That's a very coherent story. But I'm a little curious, like before you, came back to the US and came to Seattle for college in Taiwan, were you also interested in engineering aspects of things where honestly you weren't thinking too much about it?
If you grew up in Asia, um, there's only one thing to think about. Like your parents, everybody only cares about how much your school. I don't think any of these other things are not important at all. Like, oh, you want to do computers? Make sure you study your history, your geography, and all. Just make sure your tests always show up to be this, like how much you rank, right, in your class. The only thing that matters. And I didn't go to international school when I go to Taiwan. Like I went to just a normal middle school, elementary school, and high school, and everybody is just getting ready for the college exams, right? So I kind of grew up in that. I didn't have this like follow your passion. It doesn't matter.
Um, Going back to building for the technical audience, even though you really like the community and you grew up there as an engineer, what's the hardest part about building for other builders?
Um, I was always just part of teams when I got started, so I didn't really realize how difficult or hard it is. But obviously, once I started getting into open source and started to like build with others, and the more popular a project is, the more politics there is. And I think all politics exists in different fashion. Like one, builders all have opinions, right? Because we're all building things, you know? There's nobody will agree on just one thing is the best way to do things. There's like 10 different ways to so everybody's just come in with their own egos and everybody wants to do this that way, this is that way. And but you have to kind of agree somehow. And so and then there's like real politics behind it. It's like, hey, we're a company behind this project. We're trying to make money. So we have to make sure that we steer the project this way and don't make sure the other competitors can steer the project that way. And okay, that's a buyer. We have to make sure that person's thing he wants is in this project. Like there's all these social engineering that kind of happens. So I would say like building for builders, for the most part, maybe it's not that different to just build for any users. Like everybody user had different needs, had different ways of liking different things. You kind of have to piss somebody off because you cannot please everybody. But I would say the open source always have like this like commercial interest behind the scenes, so it plays into the dynamics as well. Basically, to wins the heart and minds of developers is not a simple thing. Just because people always feel like they know everything, right? Uh, but like I'm a religion, so you can always slowly change people's mind. But sometimes not as fast. Yeah.
I see. So, how do you build consensus, especially open source project, right? Like people volunteer to contribute to a lot of different places. How do you build consensus to say like this is the value that we choose? This is the type of user that we want to serve. Sorry, not everyone come here will be happy. How does that consensus building mechanism really work?
Like any society, it kind of works based on trust, right? Um,
Mm.
because end of the day, the people that can actually make the changes are not that many. People can complain all they want. Sometimes they would just leave or write huge blog posts and say this thing sucks, right? Or even fork the project. You can do whatever you want, but ultimately, it really just comes down to maybe like five, three, two, or I would say really just like less than 10 people that actually make major decisions in any community, right? Because you can't get everybody truly involved, right? They have to know the knowledge, have the expertise, have the trust between each other. Code is code, right? Code, you need to have enough quality to merge because it's actually powering and touching a lot of different things, especially if it's an important project. If you break something, it will break a lot of different people's products and lives and stuff like that, right? So it's anything in open source is actually quite critical, um, which means the bar to make changes is not that low. You have to know what's going on. You have to have the background. So consensus really just comes down to like how to get these people to trust you. That's it. But then whoever knows these people and their motivation involved is the primary thing that drives these communities. Really, are they employed by companies that have commercial interests, or are they employed by companies that have their own interests? Like we have to kind of marinate this in, and then like what other forces are driving behind it? Who's paying these people? Who is like all this kind of stuff matters, right? So it's not really consensus. When you think about consensus, like everybody agrees on something, but generally we're just like we're trying to help each other. Because if we're in that circle of like 5, 10 people, okay, let's I know we might have different opinions, but we got to make sure we can ship this thing. So, okay, I'll, I'll, let me go talk to you, iron out this thing. Okay. Can I get my feature that I'm really need to build my product in to be merged in this release? I'll help yours next time. Like we just help each other out. And so it's really committee based. It's not really consensus. And you're making sure the committee actually votes to you. Uh, and so I think this is any community eventually when it plays out is like there's certain people that can actually earn the trust and build into that level of like trusted worthiness of group of people. And so
Mm.
the goal is usually is trying to get into that place, right? If you're a committer or contributor to any open source, and most companies, the biggest job is to hire those people too, making sure that we have saying into that community as well. So
Right.
I think like the right thing is meritocracy. Everybody submit their RFPs. Everybody have a huge debate design sessions, right? We should all, like you can't do that for everything though. Like for the most part, open source is really just run by a couple people, um, and they are all just driven by the interest of personal interest sometimes, but plus the company behind them. And you're trying to like play compromise within that.
Interesting. I don't know much about infrastructure building and product. I'm curious about whether there is any product that you've worked on that in the hindsight, if the timing or market were a little bit different, it would have worked out. And please try to explain to me, like, knowing that I know nothing about the product itself.
Okay. Well, the biggest thing I think that people know at that time, people no longer know this project anymore. But people know the primary company that I worked at, startup that I joined called Mesosphere. The biggest open source project we're working on is called Mesos. And you probably never heard of it. But you might have heard of the thing that replaced Mesos, which is called Kubernetes. You might have heard of Kubernetes before, right? Because it's more commonly known project, right?
Right.
Uh,
Can you explain to, because some of the audience might not even work in tech.
okay,
What does
so
the Kubernetes do?
yeah. These software, Kubernetes, Mesos, the software is a type of software that manages computers for you. Like I give you a bunch of computers. Like if I have 1,000 computers, you don't want to treat every single computer differently, right? I have to go. It's like I have 1,000 humans. I have Bob, Alice, Tim, and Rui. I have to go and check every single one of them, upgrade and fix every single one of them. Like it's much more simpler for me to treat them as a whole group together. Have a type of software that can treat them as one big group. So when I run a type of software, I need 10 machines. I can just go to Kubernetes and hey, Kubernetes, please give me 10 machines to run my software. It automatically knows where to put it, run it, manage it, and all that stuff. So it's almost like we call it orchestration software, but it's like a way to don't think about individual computers anymore, but just give one commander that can do things for me in all my computers. So these software are kind of like your overall kind of like commander type of pattern type of software. And so um the biggest, like, if you heard of Docker before, which is
Hmm.
yet another type of open source software, very, very popular. It's a way to just package and run software. Like software is code, but needs to run on every computer. Docker is kind of the way to like put into a nice box so it can fit everywhere, even though the boxes might look different. My Windows machine and Linux machines, my running on Amazon or Google, it doesn't matter. No matter what the underlying thing difference is, Docker figures out a way to package it and run it nicely everywhere. And so that was these new group of software was born because Docker become a thing, and we need a new type of commander software that knows how to take these containers and abstract away like the last generation of software does, and more. And so I think the interesting part is I would join a startup called Mesosphere, 2014. I was first 10 employees, I think. Um, and the company exists was basically trying to create a company behind this open source project called Mesos, which is one of the earliest software that is running containers like these Docker stuff at scale. Twitter was using in production. Twitter has huge amount of computers actually. Physical clusters are running like 5 to 6 digits of computers, data centers, and they all run Mesos. And even Siri was starting to use Mesos as well. So you have these like very large scale like clusters all chooses to use Mesos. And so, if you understand or study any sort of like how any infra tooling takes over, once you see these big players start to adopt something, it's usually these tools will become what everybody else will want to run. Because really, these kind of software are very low level. You don't switch around that often. So when Docker started, 2013, called Cloud, it popularized Docker. And at the same time, I think our founders saw the opportunity that, hey, we have this growing open source project called Mesos that Twitter is using from of a Berkeley project. Let's start a company behind it so you can make sure that the software becomes the most popular way to run all your uh, applications everywhere, and therefore we can start to become a commercial entity behind it, and we can start charging like how MongoDB or any database company. You have this open source thing that becomes popular, but we can sell a better version of things, so you don't have to run it yourself anymore. You don't have to hire people to run it. Like we can basically operate and run it much nicer for you. So when I joined 2014, no, there's no Kubernetes. Mesos was the only thing that exists. Um, I mean, there are other class of software before that, but wasn't really that designed for Docker and container. So Mesos was like number one thing back then. So we were a hot company. That's why we're like a unicorn, close to a unicorn within 2 years, 2 or 3 years. Um, and I think, when you see the momentum back then of how Mesos grew, it really felt like we will be the next generation of software. You look at MesosCon, which is the typical conference around Mesos. You have like the big banks, you have Twitter, Apple, you have all these logos. Like, wow. Like when I was working there, it really felt like we'll just take over the world on that layer. And Docker was trying to even like do the same thing with us, but it couldn't even like really take over as well. And so I think we felt pretty good. Hey, we're getting so popular, everybody started using it, right? You raise a huge amount of money. Okay, you're now on the like revenue path now. But I think one thing that really killed us was this sort of like ar- arrogance, I guess, that we'll just keep being the number one option open source while not doing too much of it and just trying to make money too quickly, you know? And then there's this other project called Kubernetes, born out of Google. It was almost like a side project. There's only like 2 or 3 people working on it, Joe Beta and so other people come to talk to us. And I was like, okay, what is this thing? It's not, you know, and even like talk to us and trying to like get us to collaborate to work on this together. And I was like, yeah, no, we're Mesos. We don't need you. You're not gonna go anywhere anyways. Like like that kind of attitude. Like not me personally, but like our founders and stuff. It was like the sentiment, right? I think the sentiment was like, hey, we have so much momentum. We'll do better. We'll keep growing. Even though it's Google, whatever, all these things, it doesn't matter. Right? We will, and they're not that serious anyway. Seems like we'll just make sure that we're on the when but we have to grow with our confidence that we'll just take over the world because we're already way ahead anyways. And the world definitely showed us a lesson. And I don't think it's Google itself really because of they are really that much better or anything. It's I think sometimes you ignore the power of community actually overall. Because if the community start to not believe you're the only thing you should be using, right? If you stop progressing as fast, right? Or it gives other people more oxygen to do something much more simpler and nicer than you are. Like once the community starts to believe, like start to shift a little bit towards something else, and you don't make sure that doesn't keep happening, the power of community compounds way faster than your revenue thing. Because revenue is just it's a lagging indicator. Like you get companies to buy you, it takes a longer time. Like your logos might be growing, but the community might shift, you know? And so we learned really the hard way that I think the type of software we're selling is taking a very long cycle. So it can really hard to like just scale crazy. But we didn't really spend as much resources as possible and all the attention on open source, just assuming we would just win it because we were winning back then. And then, history had taught us like community and the consensus where the community actually votes on their feet. It's way bigger and powerful than you ever think, you know? So you don't ever want to really ignore the community and what phase of your software lifecycle it is because it will come back and just eat you alive. And that's one thing I learned, right? Because I think a lot of times when we're starting a new thing or like we assume like, hey, once we grow to a certain good point, even though we haven't fully be 100% everywhere, like we're on a good path, it will just keep happening. It doesn't always, there's always a possibility someone can disrupt you, even if you're early. And I think we're seeing this in AI a lot, right? A lot of hot AI projects back in 2 years ago, I can't even remember where they are anymore, There's a huge amount of like 100K stars projects. Like it was the next thing. Look at the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. Like next thing. I don't even know where the next thing. A year ago, next thing. I can't even remember anymore. Like it's just like gone. Gone in history book completely, right? And so that's the kind of the beauty and the scary part of communities. Like everybody wants to find the next shiny thing. But to be actually the next shiny thing forever is the hardest part of all. And if you want to start a company around any of those kind of things, you have to make sure you have to maintain that, which is very, very difficult to have both expectations on you at the same time.
I love this story. And this is story also like made me think about the early days of NVIDIA. how Nvidia, started with this trying to cater to the gaming industry, right? The graphic chips. But actually, they started in a commodity market, right? Like there are probably like dozens, if not like more than dozens of like companies who are also trying to build such chips. And so it's actually highly, highly competitive. They
Yeah.
actually did their first design wrong, like their strategy was wrong because they were designed for the fact that the memory would be super limited. So they need to work with that constraint and then they have
Yeah.
to like shift to their strategy later. Um, but then somehow they end up winning the game, even though in a hot Red Sea. And the key there was to just keep going really fast and faster than anyone else that can, churn through the product and then so that they can get faster user feedback and then start building the community around that product itself.
Mm,
So this is fascinating how like sometimes you think that you're going to win and then something unexpected come up just because maybe arrogance or whatever.
mm.
And then you just like slowly fade away and get killed. And
Yeah.
sometimes you think that you are going to get killed because it's such a hot area and everybody is trying to compete. But if you just keep paddling in a relatively smart way, maybe you can actually make out of it. Fascinating.
Yeah. Replacing NVIDIA seems impossible now. It won't be that impossible forever, right? And so the only best time to start is now because it takes a while. It will take you another 10 years to do it. That doesn't mean like it would never happen. No. And so I think that's the beauty of is if technology is nothing stays forever for the most part. The products will linger forever. Like any infra product you buy, like people still have Cisco routers everywhere. Like it's not like you fully replace things, but it will not be forever. The disruption will happen. The market keeps changing. And that's the beauty of this software market. And that's why we have a job, to be honest. Like it's not going to back a company has gone, that whole category is just gone forever. Like you back one, it gone good, find the next one that can kill that thing, right? Like you're just continuation is just trying to make sure you back something great. And it's a cycle, to keep finding next cycles to back it.
So let's talk a little bit about your investment journey after like building so many different technical products. You're now the managing partner of Essence VC.
Mhm,
Let me first start asking a very off the topic question. I check out Essence homepage
mhm,
and it has this like bright lemonade yellow bumblebee vibes.
yeah.
Is there a story behind that visual design?
Oh, like what's my motivation reason for that
Yeah,
or?
yeah, for that specific visual, like this black and yellow stripes.
Yeah, is it weird or?
No, 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 it's not. It's just like reminds me of like, oh my god, I'm looking at a bumblebee. That's my
Ah,
first reaction.
yeah. I think I wasn't even thinking, it's not like I have like months and weeks of design decision. Not really. I think whatever I do it in a way that feels authentic to me. And I also try to say something too, right? Like, and I think for me, uh, when I'm thinking of what I want to start, actually, I was an angel investor first, right? I sold my company to Cloudera 2018, started doing angel investing. And I was just figuring out what I want to do, really. And when I started angel investing, I wasn't even like investing in just infrastructure. I was angel investing as my friends. So I actually did a bunch of other stuff, like food delivery app, a nail painting robot. I do an HR tech. I'm just like some consumer stuff. My interest is actually pretty wide, But I think one thing I realized quickly after some angel investment and some talking to other friends is like, okay, the ones, the companies and spaces I don't know well, even if I done well, I have no idea how to do the next one well. If I'm really serious about being an investor. But the ones in the markets I know well, I can have a much more deeper understanding. That's why I have more intention, more of a thesis-driven approach when I back these companies, and also I can learn from it much more better. I was saying than other ones, and so, and I've noticed like the ones I did the most well with my angel investments are all the companies I back in the infra space. And I was like, okay, this is pretty obvious. I should start a fund. If I want to start a fund, it has to be infra focused, you know. And I was like, okay, what name should this be? What vibe should I? I was just sitting down. I need a website. I don't know what website should I use, and I just picking random names and fonts and colors. And like I mentioned, I work on games before. I worked on like these little like really interesting type of designs, and I like very and then back infrastructure as well, right? And I think one of the thought process back then is also like infrastructure software has been changing from like really traditional top-down sales, where like everybody has a salesperson go and you go buy Oracle database for like 300K, and the only way you try out is set up a very specific machine and go download it. Like that era has changed into like the Docker, the Kubernetes thing, where like people just download it. Whatever is a new hot thing becomes the momentum and the new standard. And you download, you try the product, and you just start to pull it into your workplace, right? So it feels more a consumer product. So I was trying to say like infrastructure products. I call myself Essence because we back infrastructure stuff. So it's probably more obvious. Um, but the whole theme around it is like infrastructure products doesn't it's not your boring things anymore. Like infrastructure product, you need to create this hypey wave. And this hypey wave that this is the next best thing for developers that want to choose to use you as the best product in that space. And therefore, it kind of chooses almost like a video game type vibe, like a geeky, nerdy video type vibe, coloring scheme and like a font scheme, because I feel like that kind of represents my background, what I'm interested in. And also, it kind of represents like infrastructure should be this like young and vibrant feel,
Hmm.
right? Because to build the next infrastructure products is no longer just like complete invisible, writing just highly complex software, like I'm reading another big Cisco router manual or something like that. Like that kind of feel is no longer. It's like you got to be the new cool thing. Yeah, and like Cursor, I guess like some of these products are really cool. Like people are all talking about all the time, and it's really like high velocity, high interest. Right, those kind of products are like stuff we like to definitely like to back, right? And part of our value prop is SNVC. We also understand that motion really well. We want to be helping any founder want to do a similar thing to be the next hype thing. Yeah.
I see. And you describe Essence as the kind of investor that I wish I had. What did
Yeah.
you not get as a founder that now you're trying to offer?
Yeah. Obviously, we're backed by pretty good known name funds. Uh, and I don't really have like any too much complaints about it, I guess, in some level. But this is what I learned from my founder friends. Because when I was fundraising back then, I was 2016, I left Mesosphere and I was starting a company. I was first time fundraising. I don't know any VCs at all. I was really like trying to figure out what VCs should I even work with. Everybody sounded like they're the best thing ever when I cut talks to them. Like we help you hire, we help you find customers, we do so many things for you. And that's why I hear all these amazing things that these investors keep telling me. And so we were sitting there with all our co-founders, like, oh wow, these people sound like they do everything. And I caught up with some other founder friends that already raised their seed round and stuff like that. I was like, hey, help us out. Like, how did you choose your investors? Which ones do you feel like you're best to work with? And my founder friends like that, they're further on than me. And like, just basically look at me as like, Tim, don't believe in any kind of BS they're saying. They're not going to do any of that stuff, Uh, so basically, find the ones that will be the less harmful ones. And if they actually did any of the stuff you said, it's just cherry on top. and and I was like, okay, I see this how this works, right? So I kind of have that mindset, like, okay, we're just gonna find, okay, what is the best branding and alignments, and maybe the people will like enough, and it's like a less harmful type of people, and so all of our investors are good. We cannot say like they're bad, but I don't think they were like that helpful. Like, because when I think of like on our journey, what's the most helpful people? It's besides capital are really the people that actually has helped us able to progress our business, right? Um, can we able to like find a way to like find more customers that we can actually able to land, help us hire more people that can actually want to hire, help us iterate on an idea to help us like do something more real that make us more progress. And I reflect that on like that journey, like most investors, they try to help, but they can't really be that helpful. I think they just have too little understanding how actually a startup works. So they are good at picking and selling their capital, but they don't ever really have to be really good at helping because that was the norm. That the competition of capital back then wasn't that scarce, right? And so you didn't really feel like you actually had to deliver that much. You just make sure you look good enough. So the founders just think you're great and do good enough marketing, and that's kind of it. But you don't actually bet on them to do anything real. So what I thought about, like the best investors truly on my cap table are none of these brand name funds, is actually angel investors. Like a couple of them, because they are so much more in tune of what's really important in our space. They actually seeing some real examples how things work out and give us much more tactical advices and actually help us in a very more meaningful way. And so when I saw my company and I'm thinking back, like, I think that I wish what I have on my cap table are people that actually feels like more angel investors, like a couple of them that are really good, but actually write bigger checks and work with us, right? Because I think that should be the real representative of a lead investor. Uh, and which are like people that actually care about you in some level,
Hmm.
also care about your space. Right? Because if I'm just here and I have interest of your potential to exit in this construction market, but I have no interest to live and learn more about a construction market. Like, and anything you tell me, update me about like the insights and things you're trying to figure out, like I have no context or too little, right? And so my flip side, I was like, you know what? I want to invest in spaces I understand. I want to study. I like obsessed like you are, so I can help explore those spaces with you. I can give you much more tactical, concrete things to think about and real trade-offs to consider. Like I'll tell you, like you should change your product to do this. Like you change your company to do Y. Like you should do this and that. Like we have much more stronger opinions and things to talk about. And we also help you in much more concrete ways. Of course, I cannot just be noise. We have to be kind of like right as well. But if we are able to like move that needle, we're so much more useful as a fund to you because you had to iterate 6 months to learn that. Hopefully, we can shorten that time to 2 months, right? Or
Yeah.
you would change the trajectory of your company because you're pursuing a route that maybe that's not as optimal. There's a better way of talking about your product or positioning your product or like changing how people think and how the product overall works this way changes the odds of your company a lot. So that's kind of like what I meant is like I feel like investors are sometimes a little bit too detached with the reality of the actual progress making of a startup. And I kind of like to flip it around, like we actually need to be involved. And because by being involved, one, we can actually be meaningfully helpful. And second, we can actually learn more meaningfully more be by
Yeah.
involved, right? To prepare for our next, we learn a lot more from that engagement to go to the next one. And so we are in continuation of a learning. I would ask them much more concrete, like detailed questions and try to figure out some more detailed things with them and do things for them, in a more meaningful way. And so that to me, that's a more fun. It's almost feel like I'm kind of like a semi co-founder, maybe like a 5% co-founder or something like that. So you can actually see like I don't have to explain in context. Like Tim knows what I'm doing and has enough deep understanding. And I'm willing to bring all these questions to you, that I normally won't even ask any other VC. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Do you invest in two companies that are technically competition with each other? How are you going to give
Um,
them advice? Um, you know,
you know,
what do you do with that situation?
it happens so often, not intentionally, no. So none of this is my intention. It's like I didn't intend to leave all the startups I joined, they all shut down or whatever. Similar. when I back companies, they often don't have much at all. So it's maybe just three people thinking about what to do next time, maybe have a rough idea. Like maybe one example of our portfolio that maybe competing is like two vector databases, like Chroma and LensDB. Like they often kind of like viewed as vector databases. And it's like, the people even ask me like, Tim, why did you back two of the same companies here that competing? I'm like, well, I back LensDB when it's Edo AI, which is really, they even haven't started at YC yet and doing just something completely different. And I back Chroma later. And then after I backroom Lance decided to even do a vector database. And then so upfront, I have no idea. And if I know, I will ask the founder upfront, are you okay for you to do this? Because we often will skip companies if the founder actually feel like it's too much conflict. Because it's the social reputation damage is not worth it in my end. Like upfront, like knowing and doing this is something I really want to avoid. But if we're backing pre-seeds, like the company changes ideas like 3 times in a row, like God knows which one. And it's often funny enough, like in the end, if when they feel like they're competing in the meantime, most often enough, they actually end up not competing as well. You know?
Hmm.
So it's a very interesting natural progression I've noticed so far in the journey. So yeah, I'm not intentionally trying to back anything that competing, but like I said, like this is all comes down to trust anymore. Like if I believe Tim will tell all my secrets to the other guy, I'm not going to tell Tim any secrets anymore. So we're just earning trust with the founders, right? That's the most important part of it. Like to do anything in this life, I think to be able to like back more startups, have the reputation, like have every other people willing to put us in their cap tables with them. It's all trust. This whole world runs on trust, and so
Mm.
we have to be trustworthy, right? Our actions need to continue to show trust, right? And and people that doesn't know us have to hear that we are very trustworthy or even see something that willing to see that, okay, this is our really trustworthy people. And so that's something we have to just like making sure we can keep doing. Um, so I don't have any like a firewall policy. I only talk to one competitor at 2 a.m., another one 6 a.m. or something like that. I don't like it's just me, by the way. And sometimes in bigger funds, it's like that person only works on that company, that person works on that company. They don't share any information. Like I don't believe that, by the way, but like sure, it's just me though. I don't have one brain here and brain here and then another Tim Chen, that doesn't talk to other Tim Chens. It's just me.
One thing you also mentioned on the Essence website, it's about one value that you think could potentially be huge for those funders is to help them find and discover and tell the story.
Yeah.
Um, was that a challenge that you had to work through yourself?
Oh yeah.
What have you been seeing? Like, how are you thinking about the storytelling and positioning point now?
Yeah, yeah. My own startup was a mess. We raised funding pretty quickly because all of us were working on hot startups in the same space that we're starting a company. So it was pretty easy. Like not saying I'm like an open AI engineer starting a new company, but I kind of had that feeling back then, right? So it didn't take us that much to raise, and but I think raising like I realized quickly like raising money is not the hard part at all. Raising money is like the easy part. The rest is really much harder, and so much of this product market fit journey exploration. It's a very confusing process. It's not like I can just run a very particular way and style and it just always find the data you need and everything. Huge amount of it is trying to find alignment with people that are willing to take a risk on us and you solve a very particular need for them. And people don't have much patience, so I cannot spend all my time and explain to everyone this way. So what way are we describing and focus our energy on the right people and focus our way to describe our thing in the best way possible, improve our odds so much more than not. And I learned that very quickly. I was trying to explain my product can do 3 different things. And everyone's just confused. I asked them, so other friends, hey, have you thought about our product? Like, "Oh, yeah, what did you do again?" I can't remember. I was like, oh, okay, this is not going anywhere. If they can't remember what I'm doing. It wasn't I'm telling them too much, right? I need to find the pain point they're actually really having pain in and able to align us super well. And I would say, so to answer your question, I think story comes into two very, very important audiences in any startup. One is to investors, because when you're trying to raise money, your investors is a pretty interesting audience, right? They have to make a decision to fund you. And so they have to understand your story and get excited about your story like themselves. And then you have your customers. Your customer had to be excited about what you're doing and willing to pay the price, take the risk of using a startup product and go through that journey, right? And those are 2 different stories. They're not the same story. You cannot use the story to sell to your customers to end up coming back and try to use the same story to try to raise your funding because they're very different. Investors care about your future. customers care about the present, right? The customers care like, what problem are you solving for me now that I'm desperately need you for? If you only sell that to investors, I was like, oh, okay, that might be nice, but is that really big enough? Is there any other solutions out there? How do you differentiate between this and that and this and that? Or other potential other companies that might be going into space and not, right? So the future is so much important. Like in 7 years and 10 years, I'm going to become this, right? Which is very different, just a whatever, a thing you can imagine what I'm doing today. Well, my job, especially working with like very technical founders, their brain has never been trained, or they never really had to been trained to really like think of any other audience than themselves. Because you often talk to just other engineers. And how do you impress other engineers? Is to talk as much detailed system crazy stuff. Hey, I look at this crazy kernel hacking thing and I just try to like detail all the glory details, talk about all the interesting stuff, all the interesting like research papers they're implementing. Like you kind of like using technical prowess to kind of like impress each other. That's like your typical thing your engineers do, right? And then you bring that into a banker, like an investor. I was like, Jesus Christ, what is this? It feels like a bunch of PhDs just like interested in technology alone, right? Not interested in making money, not interested in knowing how to do this, just hoping something happens. So my job with founders, especially very highly technical founders, which is our primary audience, is to rechange the story completely. I would just like, hey, I know what you're doing. I would often tell these founders, don't even show me your deck. Your deck's gonna be like it's shit anyways. you know, I don't want to see your deck. It's not gonna be good, and I kind of know it. So it's okay. Let me sit down with you and completely start from scratch. What are you doing? Show me your code, or show me what your paper is. Show me what you're doing first. Just show me your product, your command line outputs, whatever. Show it to me and what it does. This is what you're doing. This is how I would describe your company. You know, and all the different 3, 5, 10, 20 minutes you've been trying to tell me about this, it's like confusing as hell. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear talking about this anymore. Please just describe your company this way. You want people to be excited about you, not be confused about you, right? And you cannot change them, right? It's not like I'm gonna go through and do another PhD with them, right? So I have to really nail down a story for them and nail down two different versions of story with them, investors and their customers. And I think they have a better way to find their own thing to customers. But I think investors is a complete weird crowd for them. Like most of them don't know how to like talk to them. So I often be that bridge. It's like I know how to package a story way better than you are, right? Let's rewrite this whole deck, rewrite the whole thing. And I do it every single day, sometimes every hour.
But
So
now GPT can, turn any random ambiguous bullet points into a compelling story.
that's true.
Yeah. So what becomes more valuable in storytelling, especially the story that
Um,
you're trying to help them to see?
yeah, that's a good question. But I think what GPT doesn't know is people. Because um, when you're pitching to investors, it's not like every investor likes the same thing. And you don't know what investor has what story they more believe in and other things, right? We know because we've been observing, we're talking to them directly. So I know like what the top tier funds, potentially individual people in the top tier funds, what they're looking for. Because we're talking about the future. We're trying to figure this stuff out sometimes, right? Um, so the story is not generic. Sometimes I know, okay, this story probably lands with these funds, these particular funds, with these particular people. So this context is very hard. And I think end of the day, like even if ChatGPT can give me a script to maybe tailor a little bit more, I think we're always are trying to make sure that the next narrative is another breakthrough, another like big thing. So I don't think this sort of generic data collection and sort of like outputs is going to be the easiest for ChatGPT to be able to like tailor the audience because I know what they want, and you're not going to find all that information online. They're not going to tell you, right? And so it's so much more context in the middle. Yeah.
One last question is just, is there a problem you're still trying to solve?
Me finding a startup to solve or just solving for myself?
Solving for yourself?
I think starting a VC fund is always weird. You know, I never feel like I make it yet. even though I feel like a lot of people say, Tim, you've done it. You back a lot of companies. You raised 4 funds already. You definitely probably have like everything figured out. I was like, not really. Like the world is moving so fast. AI is constantly changing. This venture landscape is constantly changing. So I think I'm always still trying to solve my own problem. Like, how do I stay relevant next 3 years? I don't feel like I've always solved it, you know? And so that's probably as a career, that's probably the hardest thing I'm starting to figure out. Like, what is the right things we should do in this year, next year, to be best positioned to do great investments the next couple years, and constantly trying to turn that through. And so I'm trying to hire the right people, maybe change our approaches, change the way we talk about our funds. Like we have to change on a more faster pace than other funds that have been alive and before. Because I think this nature of industry is actually ever going change as well. So I'm still trying to change my website you look at, it will change. Because I don't want to be describing myself the same way I described myself even a year ago. Because we're fundamentally going to start shifting the things that are making sense for this time and era as well.
This could be the last episode of Floating Questions, or it may not be. Either way, I hope you enjoyed flowing along with us today. If you liked our journey, please consider subscribing. Thank you for listening, and may the questions always be with you.